Hello, we're back live and slightly behind schedule, but a great start of the day with an agenda full of interesting thoughts with Julian at Omnia. But we now have 40 minutes and a very challenging title of the future of wholesale. So how do we squeeze all of the knowledge and all of the wisdom in 40 minutes? Well, we started with four big speakers talking to us today. So I'd like to welcome Shikha Gupta, the VP of Roaming and Mobile Solutions at Airtel Business. Airtel, hello, Shikha. We have Tim Ward, the VP of Sales and Marketing at XConnect, as well as Ehsan Ahmadi, the CEO of Vox Technologies, and Anurag Aggarwal, the VP of Partnership and Alliances at Tanla. And you can see how this is a fast-moving industry. Look at that. Anurag is on his car. We just managed to stop him for a few hours. But to all of you, thank you. And thank you for being here. Now, if you are sitting on the hot seats here, because we are going to ask lots of interesting questions, I believe, as do take part in our a little game of our polls, because there's a bit of a parallel to what we're asking here between the prioritizations and the future in different elements. We like to talk about the products, the networks, the interworking, the transformation. I don't know how much we'll cover, but with these four speakers, I still think we're going to get a lot of insights coming on a topic which is very sexy, I should say. The future of is always interesting, but the future of an industry like a wholesale is really changing. I will steal Isabel Paradis' presentation of the title from Isabel and Stephen presentation to the Every Forum, which they said, well, wholesale of the industry previously known as wholesale should be referred to, because so much is changing in its DNA. But I'm going to jump, not much of an introduction, because our speakers probably already are pretty known in the industry. And I will go jump into products, which happens to be what we heard from Omdia just now, in terms of lots of interest in what's happening behind some of them as well. And products are voice, data, messaging, value-added services. We have security, anything else you can put in there. Well, we'll start with probably asking Shikha from Airtel, as the MNO, as a mobile operator here. What's your perspective in a product portfolio? How is that changing right now?
See, product portfolio, if you look at the ecosystem today, Airtel itself is a very large organization with a 400 million customer base in India itself. And we have been on the journey of digitization ourselves. And with COVID, it has only been fast-tracked. So we see a lot of demand from the customers, the enterprises directly, when they see themselves using our products, that why would Airtel not offer them directly? So our teams have been working in the path of creating the products for enterprises so that they can reach us directly. We have built our own CPaaS platforms, because the basic two things which any customer needs, a company needs to reach out to the customers, is voice, message, and now expanding to different modes of communication also. So these are something which a telco incumbently provides right now, maybe on a wholesale front, but the opportunity is to move up the ecosystem, move up the ladder, and offer this directly to our enterprise customers, because we have a lot of enterprise customers who use data, who use voice, PRI lines, etc., mobile connections. But they are increasingly wanting to use the services from Airtel directly. They see our applications like our Airtel Thanks app, our Wink app, and Airtel Payments Bank, where we use all modes of communication, which they can get the same for their own customers, because we have a back-end team of a lot of engineers who are building it for us. So this they do definitely see advantage, of getting a direct reach versus multiple hops. Being in this, no need to go to a data center. They have a direct connectivity, uptimes, SLAs, and there is no third party involved. So I think it's a right step, and we are seeing a lot of traction. We have built our own platform, which is called Airtel IQ, where we offer, all the other features which others are offering, like a connect to call, call masking, lead generation, analytics, and every single thing which a customer would need.
Is it fair to say that Airtel is moving to become a CPaaS in itself? Then,
Yes, you can say that because we, as I mentioned, we already have a CPaaS platform and we've got a good amount of customers moving to that CPaaS platforms
that's it.
in India itself. Yeah, so our enterprises are directly engaging with us and connecting to that platform.
So we see how a product suite is probably changing partly, but it's really the way you do business that is changing as well. It's
Yes,
the way
yes.
you project in front and direct relationship with the enterprises. Now, let me ask another CPaaS then, another still in products, Ehsan, Vox, as the name suggests, has been starting on voice. And this has been the core of a wholesale market for a while, now challenged by data and messaging itself. But how is this core product evolving? What's happening to voice?
Um, um, I think what we see today is a kind of transformation of voice similar to the SMS. So we used to see SMS P2P to decline, and the SMS A2P to start gain traction, and a lot of use cases to start to be served by SMS A2P. The phenomena that we see today is similar to voice as well. I mean, we see more and more voice A2P starting to gain traction. And this is very recent. So like 3-4 months ago, WhatsApp announced another way of authentication for one-time password and two-factor authentication. They announced it publicly. So they used to work on this for a while, and now they announced that they gonna support this type of new way of authentication from the next release of their applications. And that's about flash calls, which is a part of the voice A2P suite. So it's actually voice and happening on the voice channel. 1 month ago, I think also EMO announced for a couple of regions and countries that they start to use voice A2P, aka flash call, as part of their ways of authentication, channels of authentication. So most probably we are going to see more and more in the future use cases around voice A2P, similar to SMS A2P. The one that is already proven and starting to gain traction, as I mentioned, is a one-time password and two-factor authentication. And most probably many other use cases also will come. And you know, the trend is the same like SMS. Most probably will be the same like SMS A2P. First, some big OTTs adopt it, and then other enterprises, local enterprises, or smaller OTTs will follow the trend. And this is good opportunity for MNOs. I believe that to start to like SMS A2P, start to monetize voice A2P as well, and securing this channel and make it reliable for enterprises. And they're gonna for sure also for them come with benefits of having generating new revenue, as they did for SMS A2P. This time most probably much faster. We expect to be adopted much faster than SMS A2P.
Wow, this is a drama happening. So, voice was disrupted by SMS at one point, and here we go talking about flash call or missed call, effectively, being also going possibly to now disrupt the A2P market as itself. Now you heard here the voice A2P term for the first time. I like this dynamic of changing. I think probably we need to start reflecting a bit, as Hisan was saying, on what does it really mean. But before I can even ask Isan a more question about this new definition, let's talk about security again. It came up in the presentation we've seen this morning from Julian as well. It was one of the question, and Anurag, you and Tanla are working on security in this market as well. So how do you see it as important, and why do you think that this is somebody that everybody needs to be paying attention to?
Hey Dario. Yeah, I mean, firstly, just a comment on what Shikha and Ehsan said. I totally agree that operators are getting more and more forward integrated into the customers and enterprise customers. That's great. Also, yes, Ehsan, I see that voice is really taking a comeback, especially with the astronomical rates to which some of the SMS, I mean, the SMS use cases are taking in some of the countries. I see voice making a comeback in some sense. So I totally concur with both the statements. Coming to security, yeah, that's more and more becoming a critical aspect because as we move more and more towards a digital economy, the number of transactions are increasing. The amount of a profile of an individual available online is humongous. Nowadays people can literally, if one has access to data, I can create an entire online persona of any human being, and that's actually dangerous. Hence, if we take the Indian context, for example, the first aspect which we started is a blockchain based platform, what you call the DLT, a distributed ledger technology. Shikha especially would be very familiar with that because being an Indian operator. What that works on is ensuring that we minimize the cases of spam and fraud across the industry. So only registered entities with registered headers and registered templates and with genuine consent are actually being able to send across messages. So that's what's happening in India already, and we see that starting to be adopted globally. Additionally, I think what many players have started working on is also to build more data privacy and security into the entire framework. If I take Tanla, for example, earlier this year we launched a blockchain based platform along with Microsoft, which we call Wisely, that focuses on end-to-end encryption. So we have an edge node deployed at an enterprise end, we have an edge node deployed at the operator end, and the entire message flow from the enterprise to the operator is encrypted. A bit like WhatsApp in some ways, you can look at it. And hence, the intent is to make sure that the only parties who can actually read the message are the originator, that's the enterprise, and the terminating part, or the trusted partner in the ecosystem, which is the operator, and no intermediary in the middle is able to access and profile the information. So I feel more and more security is becoming a very critical part of every country's regulatory framework. And we see more and more regulations coming about. Like I see Middle East is ramping up a lot towards it. There is so much more security that's been brought into in the Middle Eastern networks, for example, in Asia Pacific. I see that happening. And I believe that in the coming days, more markets will adopt tools that will help ensure that not only are we looking at the flashy CPaaS omni-channel part of it, but we are ensuring that every channel which is being used is equally safe and secure from a data privacy and a data security point of view. So that's what I see happening these days in the global CPaaS ecosystem.
Well, great. So far, in three different questions, we cover so much. We've seen how the product portfolio from SIM operators is changing dramatically. We've seen how voice, the product itself, could come back and evolve. And then we see the importance of the wrappers around it. There are more than wrappers right now, such as security, which has really started to become key to the conversation. I'd like to bring Tim from XConnect here, because Tim, you also have that incredible view, being part of the catalyst, or I don't know if it's a lubricant, if the oil of the engine of these machine, which is wholesales. What do you see in terms of the traffic that happens out there?
Well, first of all, I love all of those descriptions, and I'll ask your permission that we can use those in our marketing in exactly that same way. And it was very interesting. Julian mentioned enabling technologies as one of those things that are really changing, and that's exactly what we do. We're an enabling technology. I always find it very difficult to fill in what does your company do when you're registering for an event, because that sort of category never seems to be there. But as an information provider, where we're finding routing information, validation information, which is then being used by exactly the companies that we're talking about here. I think that is certainly something which has really grown. And I'd pick on probably two aspects in there. I think there's been a lot of talk about how CPaaS and that focus on the enterprise has changed the role of wholesale. It's a growing role, and I have to be blunt about it. It's, hey, follow the money. There's good money in that CPaaS world, but there's also very, very good value add, and it's also an incredibly complicated solution to try to provide. And I think that focus on the sort of those communication services as a platform is driving a particular aspect of wholesale networks where they're looking for direct connect. Typically and historically, wholesale networks have been much more about sort of hubbing and resale and kind of acting as an in-between between retail organizations at the far ends. When you move into a CPaaS role, you've got a direct relationship with the enterprise you're providing the services to, and that enterprise is demanding complete transparency. They're demanding complete control over the quality of those connections. And the only way that a wholesaler can really do that is move much more to a direct interconnect model. And that has a lot of implications. It means that the wholesaler can no longer just say, oh, I'm going to send this off to, I don't know, Belgium, and I'll let the Belgian carriers deal with whatever needs to be done there. I actually need direct connection with each of those network providers there so that I can manage the quality, I can manage the cost, I can manage the visibility of what is going on there. That means I need to know exactly who is the terminating operator. I need to know what is the quality. I need to know what is the validity for each of those operators and be able to control that on an end-to-end basis for my CPaaS customers. So I think that's one of the things that we've really been seeing as that oil in the machinery in providing that sort of enablement to allow those wholesalers to shift into a position where they can see end to end rather than just seeing the bit in the middle, the wholesale bit in the middle. And that, I think, is a critical piece of it.
Here we go. I wanted to touch multiple topics, but it looks like product in itself is such a three-dimensional beast to look at. Again, there's a quality element of what how you do it, is how you present it, what you enrich it, and the product itself are changing. Not surprising, if I look at our polls, it's changing but when we ask what is the priority, the first one of priority comes up to be product evolution. That's 38% of people that play our poll are confirming. Only second to that is solution offering, which might be similar to what we're talking about, moving from products to solutions as well. Okay, thanks. And with that started, I think we really put on the table quite a few big topics to play with, and maybe we'll come back to. By the way, do share your questions before I will ask questions for the rest of the session. So go on the Q&A button and tell us more about your question you want to ask. But my real next topic, after looking at all of the elements circulating around products, is networks, is connectivity itself. And here, maybe we've heard it before as well, 5G is growing and growing nicely. It's not everywhere, but it's coming. The question is, what will be data network, the slicey, the low latency on all of these things that it says is going to be, ushering a new network service platform. Well, will they also have a repercussion on some of the things we do here in wholesale? Does anybody have a strong view on 5G? You're all very quiet. So should I ask what about 5G?
Yeah, so let me say. So 5G actually is more oriented toward applications, towards high data consumption and IoT. I am not sure how it's going to change from the product portfolio for an organization, a telco, definitely it is important. But as far as India is concerned, we have trials going on, but we have nothing, we don't have the spectrum as of now to launch 5G, but I'm sure it will come in the future. And the large use case which we see is more on the enterprise side. Right. So if you talk about the wholesale bit, I think time will only tell if there can be, applications which can disrupt what we are doing today. But looking at whatever the research says, the current products or the mechanisms to reach out to consumers are here to stay.
It's from Airtel, from Shikha, we hear that pretty much 5G is coming, but we have an entire set of tools and products right now. They're probably coming to enrich it for a long while before anything dramatic can change in there. Anybody would like to say something on 5G on top? If not, I will just remind you that there's going to be 5G sessions later, so we can go into more details. So let me try something else in terms of networks that might change and see whether that is a topic that we need to look more into details. What about the effect of cloud and virtualizations? The network of the mobile operators, but the wholesales as well, are turning more and more from what used to be a telco-only discipline into a simple software solution. And as such is also now being virtualized, has been transposed at different places, etc. Now, is this having a fundamental effect on the way we look at wholesale as well? I will probably ask this question to Tim to see whether I can.
And I can certainly comment on that, because I think that virtualization is resulting in geographical barriers just disappearing. Telecoms has very traditionally been driven by country level regulation, sometimes regional, but mainly country level regulation. It's been a very regulated environment. And that is where some of the constraints over what you can and can't do really could be controlled within a geography. All of a sudden, that geography disappears. You're now in a position where the virtualization of the data, the virtualization of the network elements, you have no idea where the traffic is actually going through, or at least you do want to have some idea. You probably need to be able to control that in some circumstances. But the opportunity is for that to be handled at almost any point on the planet, and for that being very difficult to detect. So I think that has two implications. One is the need and the wish to be able to control, manage, define where various functions take place. The other is the need to have the information necessary to define and control where those functions take place. That information has got to be available in a much more kind of global fashion. So I think that virtualization is resulting in that sort of, as I say, breakdown of geographical barriers, the opportunity to move functionality to different data centers, and for that to be done very, very dynamically. The good news about all of that is it's resulting in a level of availability and sort of the uptime of the networks. Resources can be dynamically allocated pretty much any time, any place you want. You really can offer truly geographical resilience in your networks, as well as simple sort of failover and standby type systems. And so I think the control brings with it this ability to provide much higher levels of uptime and availability based upon a dynamic network.
A stronger and a more dynamic network, as you were saying, that goes also to towards what you were saying before, which is a flatter or more vertically integrated as well. You don't have as many hops to serve if it's less geographical. And as Shikha was saying, maybe that also seemed to be flatter because some of the operators, some of the telcos out there are getting more into the software themselves, the integration with the product-wise with the enterprises out there. But we couldn't talk, and sorry for interrupting now, Tim, but I wanted to bring in Anurag and Ehsan, because we couldn't talk about Future of Wholesale without talking about OTT. And very, very briefly, but as you are exposed and talking to OTT as well, what would you say that the impact of the FANGs, the Facebook, the Apple, but equally Google, and you can say anybody else in there, is having on this market?
Ehsan, you want to take it first?
No,
you go on, right?
go ahead.
All right. Okay. If you ask me, the way I see it is that these OTT players, they've created a fairly high level of disruption already. But what I also see is that somewhere they realize that as they work with various countries and become more and more prevalent, there are chances of regulations which will come about, which will lead to some moderation of their activities. I think again, I'm sorry, I might be just taking the security angle here, but as we see it personally, that uh, leaving OTT channels undeterred, and given the growing prevalence of these channels, security is starting to become a major concern. Especially if you talk about 100% encryption of these channels and no way for anybody in the entire ecosystem to access that information. But of course, there are regulations around it. I see that in the coming days, these channels will be a little more regulated when they are being offered to enterprises. So, while of course, from a P2P perspective, like if you look at Facebook, for example, as a P2P platform, anything that a person puts up on the platform and is available to say millions of people to read, that itself has become a major bone of contention. We talk about entire elections getting influenced by, by these posts. So if I look at it even as a channel which enterprises use to communicate with the end consumers, whether it's a transactional form of communication or it's a retail or a promotional form of communication, I do see some moderation coming out in the days to come, which will affect the way these OTTs are currently functioning. Nevertheless, yeah, they are a necessary part of the ecosystem, because until, for example, RCS really comes about in its entire shape and form as it's expected, I do feel that richer media communication is becoming more and more prevalent. That's why the likes of WhatsApp, or I mean, the latest is that Facebook's Instagram has also joined the bandwagon of A2P communication. So I definitely feel that more and more use cases of richer communication are becoming prevalent. Even traditional enterprises, if I take an example of say Panasonic, they are an enterprise customer, and we work with them on a couple of their two-way rich communication. We see entire catalogs are today provided by Panasonic to their end customers via single PDF file. So that's definitely a disruption of the CPaaS ecosystem beyond the traditional plain vanilla SMS. And I do see that these will grow. But as I said again, that while they'll be growing, I think in the days to come, we'll also see more regulations around them to ensure the sanctity of these channels.
Thanks, Anurag. I just realized what a bad moderator I am. I haven't looked at all the questions we have received recently, and partly because, apologies if some of your colleagues are trying to get onto our platform. It seems to have created a problem for AWS. So it's probably it might be a good sign for us, as so many people want to have us. But some of your colleagues right now, I find it difficult to get him through. Just tell them to try again in a few minutes. It should all be back. So we have seen questions, and Ehsan, I was going to ask you about the impact of OTTs on voice, but the real questions here seems to be about A2P voice. That topic has driven, some people to be interested in asking a bit more about, can you give us, a bit more of interest on a bit more of a detail on what would be A2P for wholesale carriers? Is it just more traffic to handle, or are there a solution built around it?
The way that voice A2P is today, manifesting today, how it will gonna evolve, we can discuss a lot, but how it's manifesting today is mostly around one-time password, two-factor authentication used by OTTs as a channel to for authentication. Definitely will be more traffic, more call that is reaching to the MNO's network and telcos. But regarding the solution, definitely the way that today is manifesting, I don't know personally many MNOs that they have a solution to monetize it, especially that it's not the traditional way of per second type of billing. So the billing should be per call, per attempt actually. Most of the time is missed call. Most of MNOs, they don't charge missed calls, so they need to enhance most probably their billing system to charge per attempt, because every attempt is a kind of can be a missed call or flash call or voice ATP. Then they should implement a solution to can distinguish the voice A2P or from the voice P2P, similar to SMS A2P versus SMS A2P. So basically, they need to know, they need to have a platform to know which attempt is A2P and which one is P2P, because you cannot charge the missed calls of P2P, but missed calls which are A2P, they definitely can be charged as a different service. That's why we name it voice A2P, because a lot of things, there are a lot of similarity to the SMS A2P. So basically, what MNOs need, they have a billing. They need to enhance their billing platform to can charge per attempt, and also they need to enhance their with kind of firewall or something similar, with analytics and with platform that can distinguish the P2P from A2P, right, and vice versa, in order to can charge and monetize the voice A2P type of attempts.
Well, thanks, Ehsan. And I should say that I've seen many more questions, including RCS, P2P, sorry, A2P, SMS, and more coming. But I think time is also almost running out. That's how fast things go. So I probably, before asking any of the questions, I invite you all to join our chat and discuss some of those there. But I'd like you to give you your final words, as this was the future of, I think, can you describe the future of wholesale for the next 5 years from your point of view? And I have to say, just to make it more difficult, very shortly, as it's not been difficult enough. I'll start with Shikha again from Airtel. Can you tell us what's going to be the future of wholesale?
See, the way we see future of wholesale would be is like wholesale is going to stay. It's not going to go away. We would see, like, if today's situation, we see a lot of wholesale carriers for voice. We would see consolidation, the smaller players go away. We also see people entering into the SMS area because voice is not that great now, and they would enter into SMS, and that would also lead into fraud and bypass in SMS because there are so many players and they try to manipulate, etc. But definitely interconnection between telcos is here to stay. So that's not going to go away, even though there would be new means and ways to authenticate, and new services would come in. So it would change to a little extent, but it would stay.
Oh, great. Thanks, Shikha. Tim, what would you say that's your view on the future?
I can only repeat some of the things we said, unfortunately, which is around A2P. I think that move of and the growth of wholesale within that A2P application space, but it also means nobody cares whether it's a message or a voice or whatever other form. It's really about where the conversation comes from and where the conversation goes to. And I think that's what we're going to see being a changing demand within wholesale, where they need to satisfy the full end-to-end path, and they need to recognize the business requirements, not just the end user or sort of subscriber, residential customer.
So we shifted the order of importance. It used to be 80-20 for retail once upon a time, and here it is. Now we're looking towards 80% on enterprise, or value creation for enterprise, or something like that. But very interesting. Let me ask Ehsan as well from Vox. What's the future for you?
I think a wholesale is here to stay, but it's going to, we're going to see a lot of dynamic, like we see with SMS. We used to see with SMS A2P and a lot of fraud around SMS A2P. Now we're going to have voice A2P. We see traction there. We need platforms. We need to adopt new solution around voice A2P in order to satisfy the demand from the market, and definitely will be another type of fraud, bypass around the voice A2P solution to mitigate that, helping MNOs to monetize. So all of these are challenges in the wholesale that we're going to see more and more challenge. So we see a kind of dynamic. Wholesale is here to stay, but at the same time, we see a lot of transformation. New phenomena, new technology, new stuff that's coming into this space. And all the players should be flexible enough to adopt new solutions to to adapt themselves with the new environment, the wholesale.
Thank you, Ehsan. And Anurag, can you tell us what's the future for Tanla?
The way I see it is that we've already in the last, I'll say 1.5 years, thanks to the disruption caused by the pandemic and the lockdown, we already saw significant amounts of shift of communication to richer forms of richer channels such as WhatsApp, RCS, etc. I think now we are in the next stage of maturity where we look at security and privacy, as I mentioned in the past, that will start becoming the next big thing, which whether it's the regulator or it's the enterprises or the operators will focus on. We have the channels, we have the content, we have the communication going on, how to make sure it's safe, secure, and it's devoid of any sorts of spam and frauds and counterfeit. So that's what I see happening in the coming days, wherein tighter norms and tighter protocols and much more advanced solutions will help ensure that all these multiple forms of channels of communication which have now sprung up coexist cohesively, but at the same time they work in a safe and secure environment. That's what I see happening in the coming days.
Well, fantastic. We got 4 different voices, 4 different views. And meanwhile, while I was a very poor moderator, they were managing the questions and looking at the questions. Something I couldn't do. I think at least one question more we need to include there. And Shikha, I think you volunteered to answer a question on cleaning of the pipe, cleaning of the activity against fraud. Something we'll come back and talk tomorrow in greater details. But I think there was a question from Shalish. Could you give us a bit of an answer to that? What's happening on clean traffic?
Yeah, so I think the question Shailesh asked was, with the implementation of security, how do we see marketing traffic getting impacted? See, there are two parts to the security piece, and there is a firewall and there is blockchain which we have implemented in India, which was primarily to avoid the spam messages and keep the customer safe from being disturbed from messages that they never wanted to receive. So from that aspect, if an enterprise wants to really send promotional traffic, they have to abide by the rules of the country, and the platform is very well capable of actually reaching out to the right target audience who want to receive the messages. So I don't think it is a question of marketing messages being dropped, or there is a reduction in the marketing messages. But yeah, definitely, if it's an SMS, you need to go through that path. If you want to, we see, after implementation of blockchain, those kind of marketing messages which spam you have started moving to WhatsApp because that regulation doesn't apply there, right? So it's a way you want to reach out, and I'm sure the people who are aware of the regulations in a country would not like to stoop down to those levels as to reach out to people who don't want to receive those messages.
Great, thank you very much. We're running out of time, but thanks very much for the many great questions. We can answer all of them, the great many answers. So thank you to Anurag, Aggarwal, Team Ward from Ehsan Ahmadi, and from Shikha Gupta. To all of you, thank you. And you're going to be talking with Andrew Parking White on IoT next. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.